And I'm not going to eat them yet. You didn't, there's a whole bag of them.
Sorry, Jeff. No, I don't want to.
Oh, yeah, missed it. What a night.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody, to our second official budget committee meeting. For reference, we're on our March 5th meeting. It is Thursday, and it is 6 p.m. I just wanted to kick us off with just a couple, I'll always say kind of procedural, I'll call them administrative notes, but really it is tied to kind of a lot of the activity that has transpired between, oh, hello, nice to see you. There is a handout, Marina, if you want to, we can get one passed down to you. So, but we just started. So I'm going to call it procedural. I'm going to call it kind of a reorientation for where we're at, because it has not been, it's been a busy week in Camden between the select board meetings and, even from our meeting last week. And so I just wanted to kind of re-level set where we're at, because I know we had materials sent to us, and I'm guessing a lot of and hoping, community conversations. So since when we adjourned our last session, we set up a timeline and a cadence of the budget session to allow us to have adequate time to what we thought was going to be to review the budget for the police department, and then side by side with the manager's proposal that was before us. And so we left, and we thought, to give that adequate time, attention, thought, and also to give the select board a chance to have an opportunity to engage in their discussions, both community and as a group, we would hold this session to kind of hear and kind of get educated ourselves. But since the select board meeting took place and there was a shift in direction, I'm just going to say personally, you're feeling a little bit relieved, because it felt like there was a lot that was being put on the group in terms of our timing, in terms of what to be reviewed. There's been a shift in the strategy, and in turn, a shift in the budget that we are being presented and that we're being asked to review. Okay. Which will then in turn, again, so for tonight, we are going to hold to, and I appreciate for everybody that is here, and we're going to have an opportunity to walk through things. But instead of us having kind of a full side by side, we're going to have an opportunity to to learn about some about with the Camden Police Department, but also dive a little bit deeper into the services and the county offerings that we as a community are already paying for. So I just wanted to kind of, set that tone. I know that was been, determined by by the select board. And again, on a personal note, I feel like it's going to allow us to honor and also spend the duration of our time looking at, discussing, and being able to tackle the entirety of the budget, which is what we are needing to do and plan to do before the month is over. So any comments, feedback from budget committee, or questions, or? Okay. Sure. Just move your microphone closer, because everyone wants to hear.
Okay. It feels like a little bit of a do-over from last week, because very much the foundation of the budget that you presented to us was the shift in police services. So I feel like we're rewinding the clock a little bit and doing a little bit of catch-up around that. And it would have been great if you had copied the budget committee on the letter to the select board, rescinding your recommendation to go with the sheriff's department. So those are my comments. So I feel like we're kind of on new turf. And rather than looking at a 3.9% increase, we're looking at a 14% increase in the budget, which feels a little bit like a train wreck. And if we don't get a handle on it, we're kind of really headed for some tough times.
No, and I appreciate that. And I think, and I'll turn it over to anyone else that has a comment, but to your point, I think the cadence, I think we're continuing to learn, right, of kind of what's coming out to us. And obviously, again, I think I'm huge into what data reveals, and I'm also in how case studies, I think the case study of this week is very much in support of exactly why there is a shift in terms of how this will be reviewed, just because we are right in the thick of the budget season, and to try to keep in line, in parallel, in a thoughtful manner. It's like, it's complicating in terms of the information that we have, what we need. And again, we have an entire book. I'm twitching only mildly because we have not yet voted on any of the budgets yet. So what I'm also hoping is that we can have our discussion tonight. And then if time allows, which I'm hoping it will, we can also cover the general government budget and then also start to kind of pull forward a few just to get us underway as we need to be to actually review and give that the time to do our duty, which is to finish this before the end of March. Okay, so Audra, I'm going to turn. Are any other comments from the budget? Or go ahead, Court. I was like.
I just had, just mostly a comment about it, but I like, even though it is kind of like you said, kind of like a do-over, I think Chris made a really great comment at the select board meeting, which is like kicking the can down the road. Like, I think this is something that everybody here clearly has a big opinion about. It's a very emotional thing for a lot of people. But I also want us to be able to look at it objectively because it's business. It's not personal. It feels really personal to some, to a lot of people. But I'm really looking forward to like really digging into this and seeing it side by side. So I'm like hoping we can really still get into it and ask all the questions, because I know there's lots of questions to be asked. And so that's still like, we're still okay to do all of that.
Yeah, and Courtney, you bring up a really good point, because I think before, the momentum of everything that transpired, I think when I was first looking at, what the proposal was and the budget was, really the very first, I've been in this budget committee, I don't know for how many years now. And the first question I was asking myself is, how come as a committee, we have never asked or inquired about fiscal dollars that are being currently spent in the county? And it's not something, it felt like a shortfalling, frankly, on my part, our part, that in all the years that we've had these discussions, we have never had any kind of conversation when we've looked at the police department about what services for Camden are currently and actively available. And that was, I think, I'm hoping through part of this conversation, something that is important to just be flushed out, because again, I was like, it never even came up in anything that we've looked at. So it felt like I'm going to own my own piece of just, why has it never been discussed? So I think while we're not discussing it for anything related to a side-by-side, it is still an important factor in terms of just what services and, taxpayer dollars are currently being spent and what are we utilizing. So that's kind of the angle that I'm thinking about it, because it's, even without any changes, it's still services that are there. And we've never asked. So, okay, I'm going to turn it over to you. So, or
So I guess.
If everybody's aware of sort of the new, parameters that we're looking at this under, I think, it's best to just go into, the police department, answering questions about their budget. And since it's, a status quo budget, all of you are experienced budget committee members who sat through presentations in years past about the structure of the department. We didn't feel that having a whole presentation on, who does what and who's there was very necessary. And you could just sort of get into asking questions that you have about the department. And Pat Polkey is here to talk a little bit about the sheriff's department and answer questions about the sheriff's budget and the proportion that, Camden pays towards that. And we also have org charts of both the PD and the Sheriff's Department, if anybody's interested in seeing those. So
Yeah. And
yeah, I'll just sort of, if we can go right into all of you asking questions, I think that's
Yeah.
probably the best
And
way
I
to
think
go.
just two other points, and one's an inquiry and one's just I made a choice. The org charts that we're looking at that are delivered on paper, they were ready just slightly before our meeting. But again, given kind of just all of the flow of information and things, I felt having a printout of them available to us while we were actively having the conversations would be most effective. So I made that choice. And also, we made a conscientious decision last week to say that we'd be having discussion and listening, but we would not be actually voting on the PD budget tonight. I'm still feeling, well, I want to put it out to everybody else. I still feel like that absolutely could work because we could have the discussion and then continue on to some other budgets and vote and circle back. But if I just wanted to get feedback from others if they feel very inclined to vote tonight or we want to withhold. So Matt's shaking his head, so I'm going to.
No, I just want to second that because we've also given so much new information. It's changed so much, even in the last 24 hours, that I would feel a lot better as well, just from my own perspective, if we had some time to discuss it after we've heard from you all, whatever you want to talk to.
Karen, did you have something?
Yeah.
Oh, you got to unmute.
Are we still having the open public meeting
Well,
at the
it's
Opera House?
perfect timing to ask that. So yes, so we have,
No.
we're not having for,
No, okay. No.
oh, we're not
that's fine.
having okay, sorry. Yes, no, there is not going to be an open public meeting. However, this is also a session where we are going to have time in our meeting to allow the public to, share,
Okay.
for in a limited period of time, their thoughts. So, and typically following how it is with select board, it's on non-agenda items but again, given the nature of things, we want to do that now. Is that, so we do, before we get into the Q&A, should we have public?
Yeah, I mean, that's all. Yes, absolutely. It's up to you all.
Can I ask one more question before we
Always.
get into all that, just on the structure of tonight?
Yes.
It sounds like, from what I heard from also the select board meeting last night in Audra's letter, just to make sure I'm following, this year we will only be addressing the police, the Camden Police budget as proposed. We will be asking questions tonight about the services that Knox County provides generally.
Correct.
But we will not be getting into a specific discussion on like what supplementing the Camden PD would look like if it was
Correct.
not present.
I feel like we should totally be asking those questions.
If you want to, you.
Well, no,
certainly can.
I can put that up for a vote. I just want to establish that, are we or aren't we doing that tonight? Because I do think that like drives what you can control happens tonight in the conversation.
I'm happy to
keep
hold
us-
the line of having inquiries based on fiscal impact to what we hear and the questions we have, but also being very mindful that from an HR, from an assessment perspective, that like, it is not our role nor our responsibility to start going down a person by person role. So I'm happy to hold that line if I feel like it's, going past.
We're even discussing the contract specifically that's proposed between the county and the municipal and Camden, right? Or are we going to discuss?
In terms,
I just thought we weren't. Like, I just want to make sure we're not doing that because I think a lot of people might want
I think this is
to.
about, there's a budget that's been presented to us that's revised from before. We pay for county services and having inquiries there. And, but again, I think we should start having the discussion and then we can.
Okay, yeah, please,
yeah.
that's fine.
So in terms, I would, of course, want to dive right into the questions that the budget committee has, but I want to give some space if there are those that came to and wanted to share a couple of minutes.
Were people wanting, like other people here that's not on the budget, were you guys here to listen to us have this meeting or were you also here to speak as well? I'm just curious what they were thinking.
Does anybody want to speak publicly before we start?
I would like to see the public before we start so that.
Okay, put your mic on though. I'm such a pain.
I would like to see the public input before we start,
Oh,
so
yeah.
that we can base a lot of our decisions on
Well,
what we're going to be hearing here.
so I'm going to open the floor for a few minutes if anyone. Okay. Otherwise, it's us. It's us. Okay. So I know, Audra, that you said you want us to start diving with questions, but I just want to look to these two gentlemen. Is there anything that you want to start off with, or do you want to just have us start? You ready for us to start asking?
Ask away.
Ask away. You got to have a, okay, Anna, you're going to hear me be a pain about the microphone, but, okay, so I'm turning it over to the committee. You could do one
Should
at
I
a
do
time.
one at a time, and then we'll do like
we'll-
one, and then it goes around the table so
Yeah.
everybody can. I mean, I'm curious.
Will you pull a microphone closer to you, though? You know, just because.
I mean, I have a lot of questions here, but also I wanted to sort of get an overall view of, and I haven't seen the contract yet, so I don't know what it looked like, but it seems like there were 10 people, if I'm not mistaken, in the Camden PD. If we went over to Knox and utilize their services as, and I'm going to be talking about both sides because I don't want to just talk about now, because I think it's a huge discussion and I think it should be discussed. So if that's out of boundaries, just let me know. But how do you see like Knox taking over, or will police that are here now be able to just kind of like scoot over into like the sheriff under that umbrella and then still stay in this area since like the local stuff, but also how do you see it? How do you see it working, I guess? Like a very general, broad question, but there's so many more that I have, but you know what I mean?
I think maybe it's better if we kind of follow along with Audra recommended. Let's go through the department budget, hear from me what I have prepared for you folks, and I think we can dive into that after.
I mean, I think maybe, and tell me if this is like a modification to what you're asking. What would be really helpful for me to understand is that given the current county budget and services, I know because there is no an other contract that is established, that I would just like to understand what are the fiscal dollars. I think there's like a total of, again, I'm going to look at Audra for like, there's a total county budget. And then of that, there's a percentage that is allocated for sheriff, which is included in corrections and the sheriff patrol. I'm just going to speak until you tell me I'm wrong. And then, so I'm just very curious of like, of the total amount, what are the fiscal dollars? And then what are the services that are currently, alive and active and available to Camden? Does that?
Yeah, so that is part of what
that-
I've got for you folks.
Okay.
So, like I said, I think if we hear from Lieutenant Geary first, just kind of what he's got for the general budget. That way you guys are set with this year's budget proposal. Then we can compare that to what we're providing for complimentary service to that.
Yep.
If that's your pleasure as the chair, so.
I mean, so in terms of the PD budget itself, the version we now have, are there questions or specific questions related to what the department has presented? I'm looking, Jeff has his hand up online.
I do.
All right, so you got it.
All right. I just have a couple quick, I think, broad questions. One is, and maybe I'm not reading it properly, but it doesn't look like the budget is that much different from FY26 to FY27. It's like $30,000 difference. And I'm wondering if that is primarily, or if that's sufficient to cover the transition where the sheriff covers the cost. I'm assuming that's true. But when Audra was presenting on Tuesday night to the select board, she also talked about a significant increase. And I think, Sarah, you just mentioned that too, that there would be a much greater cost. So I'm not seeing it here in the police department. Is it because of the additional needs of the public safety building? Is that where the major cost is?
Are you talking about like the bottom line cost to the
Yeah.
operating budget?
Yeah.
Well,
No, I'm just talking about the police department. I'm only in the police
oh, no,
department.
there's not a significant cost to the operational budget to the police department between last year and this year, or
Right.
sorry, this coming financial year, what's proposed for this coming financial year. And I think a lot of that just comes down to, who you have as staff, because we have a few new people that have come in, where they are on the pay scale, what type of insurance plan they take, all of those
Right.
sorts of, because like everything we do is, we're a service delivery organization. So, our biggest expenses are wages and benefits. And so when there's a big change, it's usually because there's some sort of changes in, wages and benefits. And I think that there's really no difference between last year and this year, because there's no additional positions added, but there's a difference with the people that are in those positions.
So maybe what you were saying on Tuesday night about the significant increase, if we don't consider shifting to having sheriff coverage, was the cost savings potentially if we went to the sheriff, and that's what you're
Right.
trying to say.
Yes.
Okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
Sorry. And I think that thread about insurance and the options, the tiers that people choose flows through all the departments. I'm seeing it
Yes.
repeatedly, a huge variation in terms of how much the insurance rates or the insurance is budgeted each department significantly changes based on probably what you know about the personnel that are going to be opting into different policies.
Yeah, that's correct. So, it can change drastically. For instance, if you have somebody who
Yeah.
takes a
yeah.
family plan, or you have a staff member who you're just paying for their individual insurance. There's all kinds of factors.
Right, which also has to do with the tiered salaries too, as people need through.
Yeah, that's
Move through the-
another thing. For the PD, they also have step increases based on years of service. And Jody can confirm this for me, but I think one of the big differences might be that
your bed. Oh, no.
I think somebody needs to put themselves on mute.
It's me, I'm in an airport.
Oh, okay. That's all
Okay,
right.
don't tell them to shush then, because that would be rude.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, one of the factors that might have contributed to the police department having, a modest increase in FY '27 over '26 is that there are just fewer people that are getting step increases. Is that correct, Jody?
Yes, yep, that's part of it.
I think that was also one of the questions in Matt's summary that he sent too, if we could talk about the tiering, but that's sufficient for me. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Marina.
Two things. So one is, I think I just want to be crystal clear that I think what Jeff's driving at here is that we'll ultimately have to grapple with the fact that although the police budget isn't too different from last year, if we continue with the status quo, that is going to result in a larger overall increase than were we to switch to the county contract, model. And that's the percentages Deb referenced at the beginning, where we're now looking at like a 14% increase as opposed to something like 3 or whatever it was. Okay, so my second, I wanted to ask, does the budget that we're looking at, do we think that this adequately accounts for what we might ultimately need to pay a new chief? How has that been, incorporated in here?
So I believe that we just sort of continued on with a rounded off salary that was similar to what we were paying our previous chief. And I think that, given the market realities of, finding that position, it's probably adequate given the years served by our former chief. So, even if we're starting somebody, newer, lower on that scale, the cost of bringing that new person in it would be adequate to cover that. Another factor in all of this that's pretty significant to the bottom line is that, we used to have that shared agreement with Rockport where they paid about 40% of the total cost of the police chief, so both salary and benefits. So we're not going to have that revenue coming in from Rockport to sort of offset that cost. So that's, another bottom line factor to consider as well, or just, to be aware of in this full discussion.
And then Barbara, I saw your hand up, and then Allison, do you still have, you can have yours after. Okay. Allison, did you have a question?
Yeah, that was my question about like there had to be some kind of a change with not sharing a police chief with Rockport anymore. And getting back to that, it would be helpful to have that kind of stuff reflected somewhere in the expense budgets where it's really relevant, because you can't see, the bottom line is going to change because we're losing the revenue from Rockport reimbursing us. And it's just really helpful to have that embedded somewhere in these expense lines so that we can see when there is an actual difference. And then I would just echo the question too about the recruiting of a police chief and wanting to make sure that we do budget for what would be needed so that we don't take options off the table in terms of salary of a future police chief inadvertently right now through the budget process. But yeah, that's it.
Jeff, go ahead. Oh, there you go.
Thanks. Yeah. Just and related to that, if Audra, if you could address, it's sort of similar. I think that contingent on keeping the police department in Camden, we have to do work in the public safety building. And is that in capital? Is that where that is?
So that was an expense that was voted on last year, I believe.
And will that be spent this year then?
No, because, there's still more planning that needs to be done. And also, we're going to apply for a grant for that as well to, hopefully to defer some of that cost. But I think it's a conversation worth having because I think, there might be cheaper options other than, that full addition to the building that is going to be quite costly. So, I think there's more to talk about with that.
Mm-hmm. And so
okay.
that, I think that was like 170,000 or something. That was in 2026.
Which one we approved 1.2 million last year.
Okay. And so that's zero in 27?
Yes, because we're not going to be borrowing we won't be borrowing the money until 27 if we do. And then we wouldn't have a debt service payment until 28.
28.
Okay, I know.
Thank you.
Chris has a question.
Real
You have to do your mic.
On the capital improvement piece, it's related to the police department. There's a $31,000 100 body camera piece. Is that because we were looking at going to the sheriff's department?
No, the body cameras would be something that we have to
This still have to
consider in
do.
all of this.
Okay, I didn't know if that was going to fall off because of the other piece. That was the question. Thanks.
Go ahead, Barb.
Hi, in the revenues of the police department, they have 96,000 for paid parking revenue, but where was the paid parking expenses? I didn't see them, were they last year and where they should fall?
So this actually is, when we talked about, we need to have a night where we talk just about revenue, the special revenue funds and revenue in general. So the paid parking program is a special revenue fund. So this is money, this is a revenue that's coming from that special revenue fund to offset general fund expenses.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Matt, you look like you're about to have do you have a question?
I have some, but I didn't know. I just wanted to make sure everyone else had time to take this.
Go.
Okay. Hey everybody, thank you. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate everything you guys do. I just want to say before I get into any of my questioning, all my questions are about the services currently being provided, not about like perspective, hey, what happens if we switch this or switch that? What does that do to the cost? I would like to say for everyone who's thinking about that decision, the figures that we have provided do not include sort of out year costs. They're 1 year cost estimates. And the sheriff's department, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, are going to, through what we pay to you now in the county, are going to continue to provide the direct patrol services and the services that you do today in no different way than you have been. But to be able to make a decision on if we're even able to or should, make an adjustment with our long-term policing, and will it be completely with the county or will it be with the town in its own division? We really need to do the kind of total cost modeling and build out. And that's sort of what I tried to put in a document and put through, that there are so many elements about modeling out costs here. And that's what's going to segue to kind of my questions about the services you provide now, that we would have to think about costs that are going to still come down to us if we're paying, because Camden pays for a big, healthy chunk of everything that goes into the county police budget, right? And so I just wanted to say to that and be cognizant of there. Okay, shifting over to questions, I have kind of two questions.
Yeah, no, go.
The first one, I guess I'll give you guys the menu and you can pick which one. And again, I don't, these are kind of like multi-level questions, and maybe these are questions that might be best answered in information back to us at a later date when you can take it back, think about it, because it helps us do the modeling of how to understand what the out years are going to be. So it's questions on the corrections and jail sort of facility, or dispatch, or patrolling generally. Those are the three big categories.
Stick with patrolling at the moment and we can work into the others.
Okay,
So-
cool. So the patrolling question kind of is also part of the dispatch question. Is it seems like in the past we've approved budgets that are actually higher than the actuals that come in from the audits. And so my question there is there room to come down in that to make it more actual in what you have resource-wise? Because I understand staffing is hard, right? Sometimes it's hard to get all the people that we need. And this is not a question about trying to fund the police service less. This is about trying to make sure that we're accurately explaining what it costs to deliver the service and deliver the service at a high level. But be very clear about what's needed. Because sometimes it's hard to account for all of these, health insurance costs and how much it costs to actually pay officers to be here and want to be here, right? And so I think that's where, is it an issue that we just can't attract them, or we don't need it and we just need to adjust that budget consideration?
So you asking me about if we're struggling about retention of officers?
No, this is more like, to be more specific, this is just numbers, right? This isn't my perception of anything. So on the patrol, we're up 14% from 2023, I think. And that Camden pays currently about 1.8 million of the 2.4 million assessed to the sheriff functions. Trying to understand, and I think, sorry, not to jump around the numbers, but in many cases, you guys underspend by about 200K each year, 190, something like that. How much?
Is this all the sheriff's department budget?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
Oh, that's the confusion. So I thought we were still on the budget here.
No, these are all questions now for Knox County.
Okay. I can get to that in a bit, I think.
Yeah.
So
that was all I'm saying, like from the Knox County perspective, not the Camden police perspective.
okay. So can we hold off on that until I give this so we can get into
Yeah,
some of
sure.
that?
Do you want to just do that?
Well, I just want to make sure that.
You might be able to answer all
preparing,
these under that, so let me just give you high level of the other ones. Jail's up 23% from 2023. I think this is the biggest cost, right? We blew past the projections in 2025 by about 1.3 million. I think you said a replacement facility is going to cost 75 to 100 million kind of neighborhood. So what are we going to do in that situation, especially if we're funding a lot of that? What are some plans there to manage that as it goes forward? And I don't think, unless you think we're going to have like a downtick in inmates or cost in inmate, or, I don't want to get into like those costs and those projections. That's why I'm like, later, maybe that makes sense to try and help us plug in and figure out what makes the most sense for Camden and the county. Cause I do think it's a decision that should be made together. Because it's a co-policing kind of service that's in this town, in the area.
Mark, did you have something you wanted to?
I think I can clarify some of the things that maybe.
And do you want to, just for the purpose of?
And I got one more on dispatch, and then if you want to, because I know you're on the.
I am.
So that's what I'm saying. Maybe let me get the dispatch one, and then you can
Yeah.
probably clear it all up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So likewise, dispatch, a little over in budgeting, under in staffing. We've lost some credentials there. There was a Rockland proposal that is dormant now. Is that the only reason I asked that is a revival? Is it worth discussing? Is because I believe in the last year or two, the dispatch service has also been subsidized by some one-time funds to the tune of about $400K. And I think those might run out soon. And so we're going to run into another pinch there, I think, in the coming 12 to 18 months on that. So those are my points of interest.
Okay.
Discuss.
So Mark, before you start, though, do you want to reintroduce yourself?
Yes.
You're on budget committee.
Hi.
I feel like
I'm a Camden resident. I'm a citizen of Camden. I was on the select board for 6 years, but I also am the county commissioner for Knox County that covers Camden and all of District 3. I've spent a lot of time investigating all of this. One of the reasons I ran for the county position was to fix the call center because it was having ongoing problems for years and years. And, there's a lot of it that was not made public, but why it was happening, but we have fixed the problem. What was happening is at some points, the state had threatened to close the call center because it wasn't being run very well. We fixed that situation. It's also been understaffed for years because of the problems that were there. It's now fully staffed for what's allowed. And we have become, I'm proud to say, we have become the place where people are lining up to come work. Instead, previously, when I got there, I discovered that nobody wanted to come to work at the dispatch center because of the problems. Now we've become the place where other people from all over Maine would like to work. It's become the best place to work. We have a fully staffed call center, but it doesn't mean it has all the staff that it needs. Last year, we had to use some additional monies to fix the solution, which we did. But last year, if you look at the budget for the call center last year was $1.8 million. And what happened is it came in at 1.4 because the county budget committee decided to use 400,000 of undesignated funds to reduce the taxes. And that money is not available. We don't have that money available anymore. And the budget with the new people, the fixed solution, computer equipment, the one thing about the equipment, it's on 24/7, 365. It has to be replaced on a regular rotation. The new budget is $2 million. So it's going up 20%. And we budget for 2 new positions because right now the people working in that job and anybody's welcome to go visit the center, have a tour. It's really important. If you have no idea what it's like, those people work incredibly hard. It's incredibly complex. There's so much they have to learn. It's a daunting job and actually sort of scary to look at it for the first time. They have 6 computer screens in front of them that they have to juggle. Right now, they're working 12-hour shifts. And we don't have enough people for them to take breaks. That's why we need 2 more positions to allow for breaks, vacation, because you can't run people that long without any breaks. So that's why we made those positions. One of the things that's happened because of that, the sheriff has agreed not to ask for a new deputy this year, because there's only so many things that we want to try and do for bring new people in the county. Those are the only 2 positions in the entire county that we're looking to bring in this year.
Can I just intercept for 1 second? So, but for Matt, I just want to kind of hone in on the questions that because you're wanting to dive, and again, I want to make sure, be mindful, we're not diving so far into the county budget per se, but you're trying to understand based on what Camden is paying currently. Okay.
I was going to get to that.
Okay.
The other thing that people need to understand is the sheriff is an elected official and is the top law enforcement person in the county. And that's just not in our county. That's not just in the state of Maine. That's nationwide. That's the law nationwide. I worked for the LA County Sheriff's Department for 32 years in Los Angeles. Same situation there. And what happens if the sheriff is responsible for everything that happens? If a town wants to, and is funded by all the towns, if the town wants to have their own police department, it's their choice. But they can't reduce what they contribute to the sheriff's department because of if they decide to have their own police department.
I want to be very clear that I'm in total support of everything going on there. My only question had to do with if everything you're saying is correct, which I am in support of, and I believe
it is
I have
correct.
no reason to think that it's not. It will continue to cost more money to operate because you're talking about a better place to work, more staff. This is all good. It has to happen. You want good dispatch. I'm not saying we shouldn't have that. We need to cut costs out.
One
But
really
we-
quick thing I'll add is that it would have cost, if we had closed, it would have cost all the towns much more money to not have the call center in
Totally.
Knox.
And again, my issue is not the existence of it. It's more about how do we pay for it. My whole presence on this committee is trying to figure out what are our actual costs, where are they going to get applied to us, and then how do we model it out so we know if we can pay for it and how we can pay for it, right? In this case, you're saying, okay, let's assume we use the dispatch center forever, which is amazing. It's a great place to work. We have best-in-class technology. We have to maintain that best-in-class technology. We have to keep training that best-in-class staff, make sure they have the support services they need to be happy to come to work every day and do this very, very, very difficult job that you're describing, which no one is disagreeing with. That additional cost right now has an immediate, as you described, $400,000 deficit to what is already being budgeted for it. And if we still need to improve it, we have to fill that and come up with additional funding for you, right? Which is the goal. So that's all I'm trying to say is if what you're saying is true, what I'm bringing up here is that as we consider what it costs, what we pay Knox County for versus what we want to fund and have control over, because it's really more of a decision of control. It's everything costs money, right? Is it you paying it here or are we paying it there? And we just need to align that. So that's all the reason I'm bringing this up, that dispatch, patrol, and the jail are things that are built into the cost we're going to pay the county. That cost is fixed to what they set it at, and that's that 9%. And so is that 9% going to continue to expand or not grow more than 9% of our, but will their requirement of that expand that tax dollar from us? People want, so that's why I'm asking those questions as we evaluate what we want to pay for here versus what we know we're going to have to bear the burden of going forward.
One of the things that I've seen in budget committees is people want to cut money, cut things. And one of the things I've observed over the years, I've seen it with Audra, I've seen it with Amber Christie, our county administrator, is they don't pad the budgets. They don't build in extra funds. They try and keep it as sparse as they can. The problem is not with the town. The problem is not with the county. The problem is with the world, what's happening right now. And personally, I think it has to do with private companies. I did some research before I came here tonight, just to say, because people say, well, inflation's only 2%, but the problem is that's a monthly figure. In the last year, Knox electric service for the Knox County has gone up 20%. Home insurance has gone up anywhere from 17 to 50%. Car insurance has gone up in a lot of cases nationwide, somewhat 50% in the last 2 years. Those are figures, and the insurance costs raising, those are things that we can't reduce in the county or in the town. And that's the problem. The costs are going up. We have to pay them. And I don't have a good answer. I'll tell you, and I'll shut up after this. The biggest check I get every month is Social Security. I'm one of those people that is, seriously has to look at everything that I spend. And if I have to spend it here, then I have to cut back on things. I have to get lower quality food or do more work myself on the house, trying to repair it, stuff like that. That's the reality of what we're dealing with. All the budgets I've seen from Audra and all the years I was on the board and all the budgets I've seen in the county is everybody is keeping it as sparse as they possibly can because of what's happening in the rest of the world. And we can't control that.
Okay, so just I like to always try to synthesize things into like the most simplified way and in the highest level of respect. But I think, again, one of the first questions I asked Audra when we kicked this whole session off is like, we don't have an a la carte option for county sheriff, right? It's not, so like, and I'm saying that in terms of the numbers and the increase that we're looking to face, it goes with what our assessments are, not based on the services. So that's, I think, where maybe when we turned over to get a better understanding, we don't get to say, we'll take one of those and we'll take one of those and we could really use a double down on one of those. And like, so we don't, that is not how it is positioned, and it's not how, that's not a choice that Camden has. We have a choice to opt out of requesting, support by the county, but the number itself follows the same model, which has nothing to do necessarily with the services we are choosing to use or choosing not to use. So if everyone's okay, can we turn over to hear what those are? I'm seeing nods, so I'm going to go with yes. Okay.
So what I would like to do is start with the handouts, just to give everybody perspective on governance and how we get to some of these numbers. I think that'll clear up some of this. I think the challenge that I've seen in the last few years, so I'll start over. So Pat Polke, I'm the current sheriff. I've been in law enforcement for going 26 years now. I've been in administration within law enforcement and the sheriff's office in particular since 2016. This will be my 9th budget season with the county coming up. To your point, there are some things I think our governance style is not done in the past. Even at the county level, we're a year-to-year budget. Budget committee is only worried about that year. And as I have appreciation for the county administrator that, they're trying to do 5-10-year plans, 20-year in some cases. And even as department heads, we're trying to do that. But it's frustrating sometimes because we come to these meetings and it's worrying about today's dollar, not tomorrow's dollar. I think there's a shift coming, people like yourself getting on these committees, doing that, because some of these things are going to be untenable if we keep at the pace we're at. So breaking down the organization, so within county government, there are essentially 5 elected bodies, which is the commission, which is made up of 3 elected commissioners from districts, the district attorney, which in Maine is, for us, covers 4 counties. So our district attorney is Waldo, Knox, Lincoln, and Sag. Judge of probate, the registrar of probate, and the sheriff are all elected. So all intents and purposes, they're all equal, similar to state and federal government. The legislature and the Senate are equal to the governor. None report to each other, but they've got to try to work together. So it's a very similar dichotomy for the county in that I'm fighting for operational stuff with the commissioners to try to get money from them in the budget committee to make sure those services are provided at the level I feel from this constituency needs to be provided. And it's a difficult fight sometimes because administration, as you've heard from Audra, is getting pressure from other committees and groups to keep things as low as possible. But yet you have department heads going in, well, I need more services. I need more deputies. I have towns screaming that want more coverage. I have, we have streets that want more coverage, need more speed enforcement. So it's a common problem across all services, regardless if it's town, county, state, and even federal. So turning the page from kind of that higher level within the sheriff's office, I have my chief deputy, which is, from a corporate world, is kind of the COO, if you will. The chief deputy's responsibility is to be the inward facing, dealing with personnel, dealing with management of day-to-day operations. Whereas the sheriff is outward facing, meeting the constituency. What do you need? What do I need to talk to the local leaders about? What do we need to talk to the commissioners about? What do we even need to talk to the state about? Are the laws working? Are they not working? So the sheriff spends a lot of time doing that, which is different than a chief's role in a local department because they're kind of doing it here, but a chief reports directly to the town manager versus the sheriff doing a lot of that work. I think people miss that sometimes. They sometimes think a sheriff is going to be more like a local chief, and they are not. Within us, I have administration, and then I have basically 3 divisions, which is law enforcement, civil process, and corrections. Within the statute, the sheriff is only required by law to provide civil process and corrections. There is no requirement to provide law enforcement service, but our communities demand it. And we get budgets for it and it's provided. And so statutorily what it says is the sheriff will provide law enforcement services, but only within the limits of what the budget that the commission provides the sheriff gives him or her. So within law enforcement itself, and we can talk about corrections a little bit, but I think that's a deeper conversation maybe over coffee versus tonight. We're going to focus on law enforcement in particular. So within law enforcement, we've got criminal investigations and then a rural patrol, contract patrol, and airport security. So, so we have criminal investigations, or what you guys have here is a detective. You have 1 detective. So I have an actual division of them. There's 4 members there, and I'll get into that in a minute. But all next is rural patrol, which they basically are the deputies that cover any town for any service that's needed any time. I have contract patrol. So we have contracts on North Haven and Vinyl Haven, where we provide dedicated coverage to those towns. And then I have an airport security. It's not really a contract because it's a county function, but it's essentially treated like a contract where I have deputies that provide security to the commercial flights that occur at the Owl's Head Airport. So I'll skip administration, but basically I have an administrator that oversees the corrections and law enforcement functions. They're both captains. And their job is day-to-day within those, working with the chief deputy in order to make sure that things are running smooth, budgets are appropriate, they're not overspending. If there are things we need, fighting for those things. Within my criminal investigations, I have a supervisor, so a detective supervisor who is responsible for supervising 3 primary detectives, and then we will occasionally have a special agent assigned to the main drug enforcement. That has not happened for some time because that agency is kind of changing its model. We actually will have a deputy being assigned there soon. But within those 3 detectives, they're all have general detective skills, but they're all specialists as well. I have 1 detective that is the domestic violence coordinator and the civil rights detective. I have a properties crimes detective, and I also have a sex assault and child abuse detective. So if we go to patrol itself, so like I said, it is broken into a little bit of airport security and all of that. But with the patrol, you have the patrol administrator who oversees 2 sergeants. The sergeants work opposite each other, and they provide that primary supervision in the absence of administration. Each sergeant, sorry, I didn't label the pages. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So each of them also is assigned an assistant supervisor. That person is on opposite of each other as well. They primarily work during the day where the sergeants work at night. The assistants, typically, we're just grooming them to become that eventual supervisor on nights, because sergeants are typically used when there's no administration, able to answer those quick questions, make those quick decisions on the ground in the heat of the moment without that administrative oversight. The assistants are those that are getting some experience in doing that. They usually work during the day when administration is around. So within both of those groups, then they are assigned deputies. So there are 2 deputies working each shift, which, by the way, that's a shift of covering 18 communities. So you have a supervisor and 2 deputies covering 18 communities in Knox County. We're still covering the counties that have police departments, but we're not primarily focused if they have a police department, which is the case here. We'll provide assistance, we'll provide backup. It does take away from that 18 count. So most deputies are covering 7 towns on their shift, which can present a problem sometimes, depending on what calls they're on, what other calls exist. There's going to be some call bumping, if you will. So they have those 4 rural deputies, then they also have either 1 or 2 island deputies and an airport security deputy that they supervise. So those functions are getting supervision from kind of the rural patrol proper, if you will. So that is kind of our breakdown. I can get into some of the numbers, but I'll pause just for questions around that kind of organizational structure.
Go ahead.
I know this is not directly related to budget, but I think because of the broader context, it'd be really helpful right now to hear a little bit about how it is different when you have contract patrol versus the rural patrol that are covering all of Knox County. What does it look, what does that level of service look like when it's a contract patrol?
Whatever that contract agreement is. So it can be as simple as I used an example with a town to the north. I won't use the exact name, but they were looking at possibly going into a contract, but it can be as simple as I just need ordinance enforcement. And we can negotiate that with the commissioners because we can go into contracts, but it requires the sheriff and the commissioners to agree to that contract. Sheriff to look at it operationally, can we do it? Commissioners, can we physically do it? Or is there going to be a cost to that service? I mean, we'll just use the example of me as the interim chief at the moment. That, because you're somewhat paying for service already, it's a temporary thing, easy to make a temporary contract for $1 in order to provide the service. So it could be as simple as that to as complicated as you want. And just like negotiating with any bargaining unit, it's that same idea. Negotiating with the county of here's what we want, what is the cost, can you deliver the service, going back and forth. So it could be full service, it could be partial service, it could be only ordinance enforcement, it could be anything contractually that anybody would want. So.
Quick follow-up.
Sure.
If it's a full service contract, which I think is along the lines of what was being considered here as an alternative to Camden, does that mean that you would have designated patrol deputies who are then not responsible for responding to the other 17 communities in Knox County, and they are only responsible for responding to Camden, or what does that look like on the ground?
So it could look like that, yes. So I'll use North Haven in particular. So North Haven Island has a 40-hour contract with us. We provide 1 deputy out there for 40 hours a week. In the off hours, Rural Patrol is still responsible. But the fortunate thing is they're a small community of about 400, and their call volume is around 170 to 200 complaints a year. Most what we call self-generated, which means the deputy themselves generated the call. So it could be as simple as that. But that coverage for Vinyl Haven in particular, they do 2 deputies working either end of the week against each other. But again, it's 40 hours each. So there's still gaps where Rural Patrol does have to respond out there. In this scenario, I think what could be discussed, because there is no formal contract to answer that question, it was more of a what can we do? What does that price maybe look like? But again, ultimately it requires a discussion and contractual negotiations to get there. But yes, it could be full service, 24-hour service. This is what we want. There's just a price that comes with that. So.
Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you. So I think in order to support helping to make that decision, right, what would you need to build on top? I believe we fund about 66% of the budget for the police, for sheriff's department of the about 1.8.
Yeah, so I have that number here. I can give that to you all right now if you want to. And these are based off last year's budget. This is not what we're talking about in the current discussions of the 26 budget, because we are a little delayed in our budget process. But in the 25 budget, the budget was about 12.5 million, which is what was assessed to everybody.
Is that, but that's the general county
correct.
budget.
That's right. So I'm going to break, right, but I'm breaking that
Okay,
down
cool.
from, right. So from that 12 million, what we call the sheriff all other, because I have a corrections budget, I have an airport security budget, and then an all other budget, which is where patrol lies, but it is mixed in with civil process and all of these other things. So it's not, my preference is I would love program budgets, but that hasn't been traditional in most government organizations. They've been line item budgets, which, I mean, I get the program budgets are still line item, but I'm trying to get us towards programming so we can dissect pieces of these budgets versus salaries are all mixed together. So these are going to be kind of rough numbers because I'm just doing it based off percentages of staff. So that budget is about 3.6 million out of the 12.5. From there, the actual law enforcement service piece is about 2.8 million. So when you break that into the assessment, so your assessment is about 2.5 for last year, meaning the town of Camden's, which is about 20% of the overall county budget. When you break that into what portion actually goes to the law enforcement function, is about 575,000 and change.
Okay, so regardless, and that's not really the point. The point of the question was, do you at this time, and this again isn't a loaded question one way or another, I'm just asking so that I know or not, do you allocate patrol hours, like dedicated coverage based on volume of funding based on each town? I mean, or no?
Yes, no. So what we do is we just staff it in general. Whatever call volume exists is what exists. So what you saw for the amount of staff, that is to cover our calls for service just in general. That includes every assistance call from an agency that has a police department. That involves anything assisting like Marine Patrol, Warden Service, because we get those calls as well. So that is the total package. There's no allocation specific to a town. It's just specific to our call volume and the amount of staff needed.
That makes sense. And
One thing I would like to add that I had to learn about is the assessment for the towns is based on the valuation, not on the population. And a lot of people don't understand that. So
my next question.
And that's important because Camden is worth a lot of money.
And so because of that, I guess this is a really good question maybe for you, Mark. Did our 2024 reevaluation shift our proportional share of the county tax relative to other towns who did not reevaluate? Did we punish ourselves?
You bet.
I would think yes, but then again, since then, Rockport's had an evaluation, Rockland has, and Lincoln, it's going, Lincolnville.
So are those parts, so has that, so then I guess that's my next one. When does that all get like right
Everybody
sized out?
has to do it within a certain time period, and they're all doing it, and it all keeps shifting
The
around.
problem is not all of them do it. So a lot of the smaller towns are the ones that are least likely to do a reval.
Sure.
And they're the ones that are,
Because everyone's property.
yeah. So anyway, for the larger towns that have the capacity and know that they need to do it, they do end up kind of
I think about this only
disproportionately being
relative
impacted.
to what we would have to like
Yeah.
balance. What do we need, right?
Yeah.
Based on what. And so my last one, and then I'm going
Then
to
Allison
stop.
has a question behind you when you're done.
Thank you, and then I'm totally done on this one. Is do we have the maximum amount of authorized headcount, or are you still below the authorized headcount on like the patrolman situation?
So by staffing, you mean? So
I mean, like, yeah.
So my allocated budget, yes, I've been at full staffing for over a year now.
Okay.
Allison, go ahead. Although your video went away, but I don't know. Oh, here she goes.
Is just thing with adjusted valuation. I had heard before that when some towns do the value revaluation and some don't, they use adjusted value for this type of thing to correct for that.
You just gotta put your mic on. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, the state does an adjusted valuation to try to correct. It's not as good as if everybody's done like an actual reval, but it does try to make it more equitable than what you would get if you just sort of relied on just the town's valuation and not the state adjusting for the discrepancies.
Okay, so when we do the reval, we're not punishing ourselves as because I think we had asked this when we were talking about whether to do the reval, and that had been a concern that I raised, and then I felt that Carrie assured us that, oh no, you're not hurting yourself because then we do this, there's this adjustment process that forces everybody to be equal no matter what. So I'd like to revisit that conversation at some point to see if that adjustment process the state does actually solves the problem or not.
It's a good question for Carrie.
Do you want to add something? Then I'll have a question.
I was just going to add that though it's not my bailiwick, if you will, that is one of the challenges. It is based off of property tax assessment, not service demand and delivery. That's the real challenge for the county. We if you look at kind of the hierarchy, state governs us. Home rule allows local towns and municipalities to do their own thing. The county sits kind of down here and says, okay, if you need services that you don't want to do that we need to provide, we're going to assess you based off property tax to provide that service. And a whole different conversation, but I think that's some of what the challenge is. But I'm also going to add that it's not just the municipalities, the unorganized territories also get evaluated, which is also handled by the state and is part of the assessment.
So Lieutenant Gary, can you, like in the nature, under the guise of just understanding the service, can you like just walk us through how, like, bringing the sheriff's department in on mutual aid or calls, like how does it currently work? And so again, I'm not like, how are we using our $575,000, but I'm just trying to get an understanding of like what is the cohesiveness, current cadence of like how our local PD and the sheriff collaborate or work. Again, I know it through fire just from Andy, but not PD.
Yeah, we work well together. I mean, basically, we have a mutual aid agreement for the sheriff's department. So like if there was an emergency and we need them, the sheriff's department would back us up. But we have our own staff and we handle the call volume now. But yeah, the sheriff's department is always available if we need them for backup.
So I know for the overnight shifts there is the coverage, but is it on a call by call basis of whether to escalate it to a mutual aid call, or do the calls go out? I only hear the one that the fire department has, but does the call go out to like our local and sheriff simultaneously, and then it's a yay or nay? I'm just trying to get a sense of like response and like who gets notified and how, like from a resource perspective, like who gets called in, and is it, does that make sense?
I don't know. I mean, are you talking about the current agreement where the sheriff's department is covering us from?
Just in terms of in any, in any given month, is it an emergency, gets called in, and then does it get dispatched to both like local and county simultaneously, or does it have to be like, we also need county backup? I'm just trying to get a sense of like how the calls are responded to. What's that?
So like, if I pick up the phone on a Tuesday afternoon and I call my home
Yeah.
and somebody is breaking into my home.
Yeah.
What happens to that call? Who comes?
The Camden Police Department will be responding only.
And then if I call at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday and there's a prowler in my backyard, that goes to the sheriff right now.
Only on temporarily now, because from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m.
All right.
we have that lax coverage because we have somebody in the police academy and we have 2 people that are new that are not ready to go. So, for now, from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., if there is a call for service, the sheriff's department will respond during that 4 hours.
And then is there, and I don't even know how to check this.
I won't let you. You get one more. You get one more insert. Go ahead.
And I also just want to add too, though, in 2 weeks, we will be covering all of our shifts overnight. There'll be no more county coverage for us. We will be back to 24 hours.
So, and this will be the last one.
Okay.
For maybe both, because I saw on the chart, you have like detective and CID, and are there different employees based on the type of work? So like if there's an outsourcing model and there's, God forbid, one murder, a serious crime.
Mhm.
Does that change any of the modeling, whether you contract with this service or that? Like, is it, the Camden Police, do they handle every type of call?
No, if there's a homicide, that is handled by major crimes in the state police. But anything else we can handle except homicides.
And then, does that?
And correct, arsons, because that would be the fire marshals.
And that's true with the sheriff.
Correct, yeah. So the
Huh.
state has certain things that it's, as I described in an earlier meeting, the low frequency, high risk. Homicides in particular, the fortunate thing for this town is it's been a long time. But that means that that person may not have the skill set to do it. So the state has recognized that and has taken certain types of investigations as theirs because their staff does it much more often. So.
Yeah, and that was also kind of, and I thank you for the redirecting. I think that worked well. So again, that was also kind of part of my line of questioning. Did you have a question? No, not yet, but you might. There's still time. Right, of just the frequency of the types of crimes. And again, I know, and I don't know if any of that data, or if we even want to look at that at any point of just kind of, yeah, how many cases are actually going to local detective, or yeah, are there different thresholds based on the crimes that exist of just what needs to have oversight and, interception support, just like you would, a structure fire versus a carbon monoxide. So again, I'm going to always go back to my fire references because I hear the CB radio all the time. But yeah, I just wasn't clear how that looks and what those thresholds are, where county is called in just by the sheer nature of what they're handling more typically.
I can just tell you that any calls for service that come into the town of Camden, besides homicides and arsons, is being handled by our police department.
Karen. Now yeah, see?
All right, we've been doing a lot of talking about the paperwork dollar signs. I'm more interested in the safety of the people of the town. So I'd like to ask the sheriff's department if you are covering, let's say during the daytime, and with the number of people you have on, and knowing your county, the countywide, you're covering 17 times. If you get a call from a teacher at the middle school that some kid has a rifle, what's your response time? Because Rockland just had this, so it isn't like it's never going to happen here.
Well, unfortunately, that is a variable.
Yeah,
Depends on where the deputies are at.
that's right. So if they're in Washington or Hope, it could be 45 minutes before they get here, as opposed to the Camden Police Department, which are right there.
Correct.
Just saying.
But if I'm but that wouldn't be the model.
Patrol.
Yeah.
But that's, right, that's the key difference here, is like, if you're talking about deputies that were designated to patrol Camden,
They wouldn't be 45
presumably
minutes.
they would be here.
Correct. If under a contract, just like with Vinyl Haven and North Haven, those deputies would be stationed specifically for this town. So, but under the current rural patrol model, you're just part of all the other towns, correct?
Under the current model, go ahead, Chris.
I have this, I think, will be maybe a clarifying question that will help. Kind of like two parts. You mentioned the number of patrol deputies that are on staff. I'm curious about how many are on per shift. And the same question for the town of Camden, how many patrol officers are actually during the day versus during the night on, in the car currently? And how would, I know that with the model that was suggested, that I think it was 6 patrol officers, I think would be added for the deputies, if I recall, I think in the contract, something like that in the proposal. Again, how many are on during the A shift?
I will flip the question back a little bit.
Okay.
Do you really want the public to know that answer? because that includes the criminal element as well.
Good point. Good point. So I'll rephrase it then. So given the number of people that you're saying, that is considering however you're running your current shifts. In other words, probably not everybody is working all at the same time, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Correct. It is a 24/7 business, and as you know, that takes a lot of staffing. It looks like a lot on paper, but when you actually look at a shift, it is not a lot. I will tell you what my minimum requirements are for my staff before they can start diving into overtime. And the minimum requirement is 2 law enforcement officers on duty and a supervisor available to answer their questions.
Good.
So-
Thank you. I appreciate that. Lieutenant Gary, what's the situation in Camden?
It's basically the same.
2 officers minimum on duty and a supervisor.
And a sergeant.
Obviously not during whatever time it is now during the night. It's a little different.
Right.
Barbara, I think you had a question, and I have one
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah.
So workforce challenges, staffing challenges, do you see that those would increase with a new model of moving to the sheriff's contract situation, or does it ease it? What kind of underlying currents might there be in staffing and recruiting?
A singular contract in this current, if that were the only one, I would see that it would continue to be a problem. The challenge that the other sheriffs and chiefs across the state, including the 4 police departments here, we're in a price war with each other. We are continually increasing our wages and continually increasing our benefits because there's nobody new getting into this job. We are hiring seasoned individuals between departments. You all read it in the newspaper. If you read the newspaper every day, just about, somebody has left this agency, gone to this agency because they offered a better carrot or whatever. So until we fix that problem, it is going to continue to be a problem. So.
It really has become a revolving door of what's been happening in law enforcement. And to echo on the sheriff, we're not getting, it's very difficult to get new people, young people in this profession, which is kind of scary because it's our biggest challenge is trying to find recruitment. And then once we find somebody and train them, it's keeping them. And it's difficult.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Were you gonna go?
I always have questions, so I'm gonna wait. No, you go.
Now that we're finally talking about like what this model looks like, if it does switch over to that at some point, and there's 6 dedicated or however much that contract is, there is a service that the town currently provides, the call, I forget. what it's
Mike,
called.
please, a little louder, please.
Oh, sorry, it was on, I was just relaxed sitting. That my dad calls in the morning or whoever's there. Sorry. Which is for the elderly community. Sorry, should I just go like this?
Phone and be like, hello.
Madonna. And so when, right now, when they don't respond, there's like a well visit, essentially check. Is that going to be something that continue, like, are all of this, if we switch over, when you had said earlier, if we can drop whatever contract, are we allowed to, I mean, Sarah had sort of said like cherry pick, but can we say these are the types of services that we would like to have given by the county that we are paying for?
So I will say that we already do a lot of those same services. And I know in talking with the commissioners, there's a lot more services that we feel we should be providing the communities. It's just a matter of changing mindsets. Nothing against leadership, but leadership sometimes gets stuck in this is how we've always done it. And the county is reimagining itself in some ways. With dispatch or the call center in particular, there's a lot of things that they could probably do for us or for your community in particular. But to give examples, we do San for Seniors, we do school visits, we do lunch with a deputy, just like everything that happens here. We just have a lot more communities that we're doing it in. So it may only see us in a sporadic period of time versus maybe every day. But to the point, yes, anything that the community would want could be part of that. But like I said, there's just always a cost potentially to what that request is. So.
Yeah, and I imagine that's also like in coordination with the fire EMS group, because I imagine like some wellness checks. I mean, I would just be curious, like how that, we don't need to get, get into it now, but I imagine it's like a combination of what is the most effective resource for that check-in, depending upon the circumstance. But again, I digress. The only question I'm going to circle back to, but it may not be the appropriate time or not, but Lieutenant Geary, I heard you just say that, there's going to be a shift of the local PD being able to take over the remaining of the 24-hour shifts. And I'm just curious, like how that comes about is there a different head count? Because that's a pretty significant add-on to be able to all of a sudden have that coverage. And again, if it's not the appropriate time, or I'm just curious, like how, like what has changed based on what's there.
So right now, we had Officer Chris Tarian, who was working one overnight shift, so 4 on, 4 off. He's currently at the police academy, and the police academy is 4.5 months. We had an officer we brought on, Officer Trevor Carty, and he was basically on a field training program, and he was not ready to go on night shift yet. So that's why when we had this, we had, a dedicated person on an overnight shift for 4. And then the other 4 shifts, we couldn't put anybody on that because they weren't ready, because in the field training. And that's when we asked the county if they could cover from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Now, Officer Carty is ready, and we're going to put him on the overnight shift. Now, we're still going to be vacant Chris because he's still in the academy, but the sergeants and the day officers all stepped up, and they said that the sergeants will stay over 2 hours till 4 a.m. and the day officer will come in at 4 a.m. So we'll have our own coverage now 24/7 with no assistance from the sheriff's department.
So other than, I mean, that's,
Well, backup, if we
Again.
need them for backup.
yeah, I mean, again, I feel like that's like greatly appreciated. I also worry about burnout. Again, I'm not in the department, but I'm also recognizing that long shifts are long shifts. But from a budget, I'm going to compartmentalize, but from a budget perspective, the budget that we're going to ultimately be voting on already includes that head count for that coverage. Is that so that doesn't change the fact that the person's coming out of the academy, and so that head count or that monetary value remains the same as does the monetary value with the overnight coverage of the county, correct? So their budget and our budget, even without the county doing the 24-hour coverage, or is there additional fiscal?
Yeah.
Are we paying into the 24? Yeah, I'm gonna let
Where
Chris
she
get.
might go with that is, do sergeants get overtime as well? And because they're extending their shift, would that need to change the overtime budget?
And also with the agreement of the overnight shifts, is that a supplemental fiscal contract in addition to the what we're paying of the 525? And so if county's no longer covering 24.
But the county does cover, the county does cover on a 24-hour basis because they're always a backup. They're always a backup, and they always have to
So
provide.
county's going to continue to do what county does. And Jeff, I see you on there, so I'll come to you and then, but yeah, but is there a fiscal impact potentially for the overtime? Because that's right, I hadn't factored that in, which is something to think about. And also nothing still shifts with what we pay towards county for that coverage that's already happening.
Correct. So the second question to answer first is, under that current agreement of that block of time to cover, we're treating you just like every other town. So there's no expense. That's just part of the coverage. But in turn, to Karen's point, we're only going to get here from wherever we're at the time it takes us to get here. However, one of those scenarios, if it is the breaking into the home during that time, hey, Rockport, we need you to go. And that's already part of that mutual aid agreement. It's all part of that life-threatening call that needs backup to go for. So, so there is no cost on that part of it. And I'll let Lieutenant Gary answer the other part about is the overtime enough for this?
Yeah, and then Karen and then Jeff.
So yes, it will cost 4 times a week because we're going to have 4 shifts, like I said, overnight covered. So 4 shifts will be, so it's for to be, it's be 16 hours a week that we're gonna have to cover with overtime. And I talked to Jody and I got the up-to-date accrual on our overtime line until June. And we're in good shape as far as that. And I did ask staff, I had a meeting with the supervisory staff about this, going back in full coverage. And kudos to all the staff, they stepped up and they wanted to, cover this.
So I will bring up one thing, because I think it is important for him to share, is your 2 new people still need to go to the police academy. And we're already talking about how do we make that work when that happens? Is it going to be one at a time, or do we send both at the same time? But again, as we looked at this budget, we think there's enough in there to make that work in a similar fashion to what we're already doing. So
Karen, you go and then go ahead, Jeff. Did you have a question? Okay, so Jeff, your hand's up patiently in the airport. Go ahead.
Thanks. Could be some redundancy here. One is for Camden and one is for Knox County. And first a disclaimer, I know nothing about staffing for police, but it sounds like we're pretty thin and we've got it pretty much dialed in terms of what staff we need for patrol officers. How do you figure out the other roles? Like is there a standard ratio of sergeants and detectives and lieutenants? That's one question. And the second question is partially related to the county is, can we do sort of an a la carte thing so that what I would call not patrol officers, but everything else could be handled by the county? So 2 questions. For Camden, how do you figure out the ratios of staff? And for the county, can we do sort of an a la carte, what services are provided?
I did provide what we do for staffing, but I can quickly go over it. Day shifts.
No, I saw that. I saw the staffing.
So that is the staffing levels for all the shifts, and so what you
No,
saw.
I understand that, but I was wondering is how do you come to that? That's like, we need a detective, we need 2 sergeants, we need a lieutenant. I don't know. Tell me, I don't know how it works. Is there a standard ratio in chain of command? Is that when you have 5 patrol officers, you need a lieutenant, you need 2 sergeants? Is there some ratio like that?
So there are national best practices, but unfortunately it depends on the size of your organization. So I'll go back to my original time here for my first 13 years. Every position other than detective is the same position that's been here since I started in Camden in 2000. There was a chief, there was a lieutenant, there were 2 sergeants and patrol. A detective was added at some point. I forget exactly which year. How those leaders came to that, I can't answer. I don't think the lieutenant can even answer because that was just the way it was. But if you look at national best practices, what you're looking for is supervision needs to be on every shift. The complement of supervision is usually 5 to 7 for law enforcement, depending on the types of calls you have, the demographic of the place you're policing, all of that. And then when we get into what we call command staff, so your lieutenants, your captains, those types of things, typically you're putting a few supervisors under that person because that's the go-to mentor, guide, teacher, fighting with the chief, if you will, about, hey, this is what the troops need to do the job, but also then taking the orders from the top back down and digesting for them. And then obviously the chief, because every organization needs that top leader, that's where that position comes from. So does that answer the question?
Yes, thanks. And how critical is it that is a local versus a county management staff?
My opinion is very critical. Each organization is going to have different policies and procedures. That is one of the concerns that your current staff had when I met with them on Friday when this kicked off. What's going to change? for all intents and purposes, nothing because I'm the interim person. But if I were to have them within my staff, I would need to make sure they understand my policies and procedures and we're trained to the standard I need them to be. Now, I'm not saying they're not, but there would have to be an assessment to do that. So I think it is very critical that leadership is within the organization. So.
I got Courtney and then I got, yeah. Deb.
This is just kind of like a piggyback onto what Jeff was saying and what you were just talking about. So has there been talk about a hybrid type model at all? And I guess that would mean kind of like what Jeff was saying, is there a way to just keep patrol here at what it is, but then everything else kind of be higher in the sheriff's department? Or, I mean, I don't know how that would look. It was just, an example, but has that been talked about?
There have been conversations of what are things that could be shared, yes. Not necessarily a hybrid model, but what could a contract look like? Like we said, it really depends on wants and needs. Yes, on paper, could it work? Yes, but having that practical experience, it's difficult to be an outside supervisor trying to manage staff that you don't have direct control over. Sort of the reason we had to have the sheriff as the interim chief. As a sheriff, I can't tell these folks what to do, but as interim chief, because of the way the charter is and all of that here in town, I now have that authority. So it gets a little dicey when you look at kind of the a la carte. It may be more of resource sharing versus a la carte, if you will. So.
Go ahead. You gotta put your mic on, of course. Sorry.
Lieutenant Gary, I think it's amazing that you have officers who are willing to do work overtime to cover shifts for the people who are in academy. But on the other hand, does that make the most sense to, when people are working a lot of overtime shifts, they're just I would imagine there's a little bit of burnout for their regular shifts. And when you have the ability to maybe possibly work with the county instead. And I'm just wondering how much collaboration goes on. Like, for instance, there's more detectives in the county and we have one detective here. And personally, we never solved the situation where we had all the vandalism to the parking meters. And was there any collaboration done there? It seems like you could be collaborating more, working together, being partners, and maybe instead of having overtime for our officers and burning them out, work with the county for a little while until we have officers available.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how that works.
Yeah.
I think it's great that they're willing to
Yeah.
do it, but on the other hand, I know when I'm a gardener, when I'm working around the clock, I'm toast.
Well, we're really only asking the officers to stay over 2 more hours on their shift.
But it's a 12-hour
How long?
shift.
But it's a 12-hour shift.
12-hour
It's a
shift.
12-hour
That's
shift.
long.
It's a long time.
It is. We'll start it in 2 more weeks. And then that will stop when Officer Tarian gets out of the academy. And when is that? In June.
And
And then,
there's 2 more officers that still have to go to academy.
sorry, May 20th. And then we'll have 2 dedicated overnight officers and there will be no overtime at that point.
But you said there's 2 officers that still have to go to the academy.
But we still have 2 more that have to go
Yeah,
at some
so
point.
there's
Right.
still
Right.
which is amazing. I'm so glad that there are officers that are going to the academy to
Yes.
get trained up to come in. Again, I'm kind of just to continue to echo it. It's like that burnout, and none of us are. I'm not. Maybe some of us are more experts than others, but looking at that patrol and the pressure put on that patrol group to cover an exorbitant number of hours, even in a town like Camden, where we have our ebbs and flows of calls, right? I would ask that same question of, is there enough resource allocation and headcount to cover the broadness of the patrol versus the headcount? And I don't know what the case ratios are. And this is I'm talking just numbers and talking about coverage of of what potentially could be, more sustainable for, the hours of the PD versus the more specialized, areas. So, and that collaboration is,
Just why burn out people when you could collaborate?
yeah.
So I'll say, you'll answer in just a second, but you got to remember that burnout's also affecting my staff. Those 4 hours they're covering additional volume that they weren't originally part of our budget to cover. So they're taking on extra workload, having to drive extra miles, having to do extra things that they also weren't ready for. And we've had to have times where we've had to call people out to help cover that with our own overtime. So.
And I just want to restate this. The sheriff came to me and asked if these guys would like to have this overtime, you know? And so I brought the command staff in and we spoke to all the officers and we said, would you guys be willing to step up and do this? And they all agreed. Every one of them agreed.
Right. Could you also mention on how?
Sergeant Weaver?
And it wasn't just about the overtime, it's that, we go back to the model that from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. when the sheriff's department's covering, you have 2 deputies on in the whole county again that are covering the whole county. So now that we're available with Officer Carty to take the overnight and the other staff that like us, and myself and Sergeant Butler that are covering these 2 extra hours, we now have a dedicated officer that's in town to respond to a call within minutes rather than a deputy that's tied up in a call. That's part of the reason.
Well, no, I think.
So I'm trying to,
I think it's- I think
we
it's-
understand that like we are working long hours. We're used to working the long hours. It's a short-term thing, but it's also that we want to provide the coverage that's here in town.
Yeah.
We were also
go ahead.
prepared to answer the questions that you're asking tonight about what a detective does and what we do locally, and we were told we didn't have to. So those are questions we can answer if the people would like them.
How, if you guys work collaboratively on, as in the detective world, like helping people with, like, for instance, when we had video footage of somebody vandalizing the newly installed parking meters. And that was nothing ever came to it. Did you guys work together with that? I'm just wondering.
Who do you mean?
Help.
No.
Seek help.
I'll let the
Yeah, I mean,
detective
we
answer
share
that.
we share information of, you know, videos that we get or pictures that we get of people who are on videos. I specialize, the county, each detective specializes in a certain thing. I've done it all. I specialize in all of them, whether it's the burglaries or the frauds or the sex assaults or all those things. So that where I think is you're asking about the specialized things. And Camden being one detective, I've been a detective now for 13 years. Between Brunswick and here, I specialize in all of those issues. If I need extra help, most certainly I would ask the sheriff's department. I would ask any state police. I needed to call the state police on a case the other day, and we do that. So we do collaborate if we need that assistance. So
There also is a resource that they haven't mentioned. So within the district attorney's office, there is an investigator as well, that most of us utilize that person to help us with evidence processing and other things like writing warrants and so forth. So that's another resource that they do use that you don't necessarily know happens.
correct. And currently, I'm working with the Attorney General's office on a embezzlement case for Camden that's several $100,000. So I do collaborate with the state and other agencies.
Okay, so I'm just being mindful of, we've got 20 minutes left tonight. So, are there any additional questions? I would love, because we said we would really try. Well, we would try, but you guys can, do we want to try to cover general government, or do we want to use the rest of our time to ask any final questions? And I'm only getting a little twitchy that we have yet to vote on a single budget in this, but don't worry, no one has to sleep here throughout the rest. Go ahead.
I think it's understood that we're voting strictly on the Camden Police Department, and I think we know enough now. I'd like to go ahead and just vote and.
But we're not voting on that tonight.
But I'm asking.
You're allowed to propose it. But we don't have to.
I like to propose it because I think we know enough now. I wouldn't mind getting that done and approving the budget and moving on, so we don't have to revisit a lot of this again.
Is there a second for that? You gotta do it officially.
Second.
Any discussion?
I totally, completely disagree. There's still so much more that I'm not really, because of the parameters that have been set for the discussion, that I've not been able to ask or understand, because we're just sticking to budget purposes now that there's still so much more discussion. I think that has to be had, and I do not feel comfortable voting on this tonight.
Any other, go ahead.
I think that there needs to be somehow a broader conversation had about when is the town going to have and how is the town going to have this conversation. And so we've like sort of talked about bits and pieces of it here tonight because there are a lot of us here and it made sense to do so, but clearly there needs to be a much broader policy discussion had. And I think I'd like to, I guess, maybe ask the select board to guide a little bit the process, you know, help us. And I'm not saying right this moment, but like, I think we need a little bit of, or maybe we have another workshop where we talk about just process, like how are we going to have this conversation as a town? What does that look like? What is the timeline? How do we get public input? Clearly, it needs to be a much broader conversation that's going to happen in the context of the budget committee during this budget cycle.
So you have a motion on the floor, just whether we want to vote on it. So I am going to call, if there's no other, I think we should at least call a vote, whether we want to actually vote on it. So,
Can I say one
Go ahead.
thing? The one thing I would add, the reason I called for the vote is I don't disagree if the town wants to have a bigger conversation, but I don't think there's enough time for it to happen within the budget
Yeah.
season. And we need to have an approved budget for,
Yeah.
I'm speaking as a Camden resident now, an approved budget for the police department, because that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is not something, this is not a race. It doesn't have to decide it in this meeting by this budget committee. If you want to have a broader conversation, I think it's happening. But right now, I think we need to approve a budget and move on. Because as I understand it right now, this is not a discussion about either or. This is a discussion to approve the Camden budget, police department right now.
correct. Go ahead.
Not that I have too much of a place, but just a reminder, it will give these folks peace of mind. That's the part I think has been a little lost in some of this is we're all looking at numbers and looking at paperwork. There are real lives attached to our decisions or your decisions. So I think it is important, you know, to Mark's point that that'll give them some peace of mind. So.
And then there's no nefarious undertone of like you know, I mean, nothing's being switched or, yeah. So
So did the rest of the budget committee get the updated copy of the budget?
Yeah.
And in that copy, and if I'm asking the question for clarity, in that new copy, your budget position is saying
Yeah.
do the same as last year, right? That's the
correct.
It was all.
Yeah, it was.
To us today.
So
Okay.
let's do one more comment and we'll.
Yes.
A quick.
And I'm going to echo Mark, maybe a little differently, that I think that we have begun the discussion and we are starting to live some of those questions and what some of the answers are and look at those considerations. But it's beyond the scope of a normal budget cycle. This stuff has to these discussions have to start in like June or July.
Correct.
To run the scenarios. And whether it's a la carte, whether it's the whole department or
Yep.
whether it's nothing.
Yeah.
That has to happen. And
Yeah.
so calling the questions is appropriate.
Okay, so I'm going to call a vote. So all in favor of voting on the police department budget this evening? And you have to say your name. How do we do it for the online?
You gotta say the bottom line expense number.
Well, yeah, we'll do that next. This is just if we're going to take a vote on it and then we'll have someone call it out. And then, okay, so is that a unanimous yes? Okay, so that's a unanimous yes to vote. So with that, does anyone want to bring a motion stating what the actual?
So I just want to make sure, because we're voting on the police budget here.
Yes.
Is the budget, is the updated budget that you asked for, even though it's relatively the same as last year, are you comfortable that that's enough money to run the department this year with a new police chief and all that?
now.
Like, speak now.
Okay, I am confident that it's enough for this year if nothing changes. If we have somebody who resigns or goes somewhere else or, you know, whatever the case may be,
Sure.
we've got the reality of the fact that our neighbor to the south is offering $30,000 sign-on bonuses and yeah, so anyway, like the wage war, price war is a real thing. So, you know, we're good as is, but I don't know about unforeseen circumstances and staff movements
Of
and that
course,
sort of
of
thing.
course, force majeure, obviously. Right.
Yes.
Okay, so does anyone want to call?
I'll make a motion that we approve the Camden Police budget for 1,834,000 and I can't read the number, 800?
Second, any other discussion before we call the vote? Looking online. Okay, all in favor? Okay, so we
Jeff
have,
is yes.
it's a unanimous yes.
I do have a question.
We did it. We voted.
Passed.
We passed a vote in this fiscal. Yay, I'm so proud of us. And we have 10 minutes to spare.
I think you have time to do.
Can we please,
Some
for
more.
the sake of my sanity,
Yes, yes, you
just
can.
like, and I say that with so much appreciation for everyone that has shown up and taken the time to express their input and the ongoing input, but I would be so happy if we could also do general government.
Yes.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure, always.
Thank you, all of you,
Yep.
from behalf of Camden.
Yep.
We wouldn't
And you
be
can
here
stay
if
for
you guys
general
weren't.
government. It's exciting. It's not, it's,
Did we ever get an answer from select board people about Marina's question?
I think we'll.
You were very eloquent, Marina. Thank you
I
for
think
saying
we'll-
what I couldn't.
I think we'll circle
get out.
back. No, I think we'll circle back in terms of like, what is that process? Because so it's not just hanging out there. Yeah, I just wanted to like actually get, it's not lost. Yeah.
Pat? Sorry.
Okay, we're still in session. just
Sheriff
saying.
Polkey made a good point because you've spoken about dispatch.
Oh, dispatch.
Yeah.
Okay, so we just, we'll wait. We'll give everybody.
I can't hear. I can't hear.
Can you hear us now?
No.
We're gonna
I can
get
hear
back
you,
to it just a minute, everybody.
There's people exiting, so it's going to take a minute.
Sorry, thanks. I thought we were still going.
I think you're just hearing the general room chatter in the background. I can actually hear it fairly well.
Hmm.
But I'm not in there. Now we can.
With no bandwidth.
Okay. Thank you.
You did a nice job.
Oh, thank you. Okay, does everybody have 10 more minutes of attention span? Going once.
Join us.
Call to order. All right, you guys, 10 more minutes, okay? All right, all right. Who's we have? Okay, 10 more minutes, and I promise we will be, well, you don't have to sit down because you're stretching your knee, and so yes, knees first, but we have 10 minutes, and I know we're gonna do dispatch. I love it. I love winter. And then, so let's do dispatch and then we'll see where we stand and then we can do general government. But this is, yeah, I'm proud of us. Okay, so can you orient us to page numbers?
Yes, so dispatch is right behind the police department budget. It's page 12 in your binder.
Okay.
But if you flip through all of the police department materials, the dispatch is the next page.
Page 12.
And I'm
is that?
staying around just to maybe answer general
Perfect.
questions because I'm sort of intimately knowledgeable of that. So
I did have a
In
question,
general,
actually.
Audra, is that the whole dispatch chart that shows each town's values and whatnot?
Mhm.
Is this just sort of a fixed fee piece that we really have zero influence on?
Yes.
I know. That's why I keep going back.
Oh,
to.
actually, no, dispatch fees are calculated differently than our county assessment. So that's a good point. Dispatch the way that that cost is divvied up is based on call volume. All over the county. So they look at, I think Rockland pays the highest.
It's call volume based off, because there's contracts with every place. So it's not just county towns. Any town can contract with the center. So, and then that gets broken out by volume that way. So, because we had Lincolnville for several years, but then it was Lincolnville just for fire and EMS, not for police. And so it's a little wonky, but ultimately it is based off the demand by each contract. So.
And one thing I'd like to add in support of the people that do the job is each town, each fire department has.
We can't hear.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Each town, each department often has different things that they need from their dispatch. So they have to learn different codes, different everything for all of the different fire departments, all the different police departments. It's a daunting job, and I can't compliment those people enough.
And it is one of the departments that is directly under the commissioners, by the way.
The commissioners.
Under the commissioners, yeah.
Any other, okay, Courtney?
I had one quick question, but it was kind of bouncing back. When they were talking about doing the overtime stuff, but you had said that you have two people on, day, night, whatever, there's those different shifts. But then you had said it was giving them overtime to cover that 4 hours. If they're there, like, it just didn't make sense in my brain, because I was like, wait, if they're already there doing, that's their shift. And they're always covering Camden, how would that put them into overtime?
So we've had to call in individuals before because somebody may bang out sick, as we call it. But so there is an impact. It's not, I was just making the point of, it's not just these folks that feel some of that impact. So.
Just to provide coverage for general stuff. So I don't understand it. Maybe you guys do then. In this particular case, this sort of budget's a little different. You've got the department head budget and the town manager budget, the 265,064, which is last year it was 183. Who sets that? Does that number come from Mark as the department head for this, or where does that come from?
No, it's for budgets like this, we just put the same number in. Because it's just an assessment, we get sent the number.
The assessed number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That we don't really have the ability to influence, just goes up because it does in this particular case.
Mm-hmm.
And Audra, I do want to make a correction. The first assessment that was handed to me, I want to say a couple weeks ago, the dispatch fee was at 265,064. That since has changed and reduced to 256,274. So the town manager budget is still the original amount. So if the budget committee would like to amend that amount to the correct assessment.
So when we call the vote, then the call to vote would be on the 256,274.
Yes.
Okay.
If I may, I'll ask this of the commissioner. You just had your meeting yesterday. Is that number changed from what she's saying they have now?
It may change. Because the original.
I wonder if it's safe to leave, should we leave the original amount in there then?
I wish I could remember which is because I'm not sure where the two new positions are in the budget. I don't know if they're included, and I think that may be a different number. We're trying to get that to you as soon as possible, so it may change
So
what you're voting on right now.
So maybe it's not a great idea to.
Yeah, I'm all in. I feel accomplished this evening. I do not feel like voting on something that we have to then circle back and not vote on. Is my perspective with 5 minutes left. Given the information we have just received, I'm not comfortable having a vote on a number that may not be what's written down. So are there any other, again, I don't know how we're feeling. I think we're going to need more than 5 minutes to do the general. So how do we feel about calling an adjournment for this evening, or do we want to have any other? Everyone's ready.
Can I just ask
Okay,
one
go
quick
ahead,
question?
Marina.
How-
No.
What's causing it to change? Is this something that's just going to keep changing, or are we going to get to a final?
No, there
big
was,
They just
firm
had their
number?
meeting.
we just had the first, because the budget was late in being finished, because we had to wait to see if the legislature is going to approve us appointing a budget member so we can have the budget. It was not, I saw the first rough of the budget last night. And one of the things there was discussion about is adding in the 2 members. We had a long discussion with the director of the dispatch center, and she articulated why those 2 positions are important. But I don't know if the numbers have reached you yet. And that's,
They are in so when they came last night, that's why my distribution was slow tonight. I did get my hands on the, I'm so sorry, her name, who's the financial chair?
Amber Christie. Kathy.
She sent it to me.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, it's not a moving target. It just isn't, it's just the timing of
And
it.
I was like, wow, they came in right at the same time as our
Oh, yeah.
revised pages. It's like, what are the odds of that?
So before we call to adjourn, just reinforcing 36 hours ahead of time is the request of the committee to get data, presentations, information. We will revisit later kind of how we're going to proceed with just process and order and discussion around the broader communication and how, what else? Audra, is there anything else you want to?
I think just in general, there's going to be a lot fewer presentations this year and a lot more just
Great.
focused on committee discussion. So don't be surprised if you don't get any supplementary materials. And also one of the new sort of inserts into your packet that we just handed out tonight is the debt picture. So like the debt that we have over the next 10 years, and then looking at the proportion of debt for different sort of capital expenses, both this financial year as well as moving forward. And, I think that like Matt was saying, we can't just look at the budget in terms of like the year in front of us. We've got to look going forward.
Yeah.
And in terms of debt, and I just want to keep reminding everyone of this, there was a pretty large infrastructure bond that was approved a few years back. We've been, working under a bond anticipation note, which means we're only paying interest on, the money that we've borrowed to date for projects, but that can only last for 3 years. Then it has to be converted into long-term financing.
Okay.
Next year is the year that it's going to be converted into long-term financing. So there's going to be a major jump in our debt service repayment between this year and next year.
Yeah.
So that's a budgetary impact as well that we need to look out for. And I think that, having these bigger, broader discussions about service delivery and, what we're prioritizing and what we're spending money on. I mean, this year looks like a difficult year. Next year is going to be a much more difficult year. And just to remind, service delivery organization, cutting costs means cutting services, which means cutting people. And that is always going to be true of town government.
Yeah, and Matt, just to finally close the loop before hopefully someone calls in order, for us to adjourn, is the report you sent, and I'm loving that, and I'm excited to get ones in the future. I think it was knowing the sensitivities going into this evening. I just wanted to be very mindful of what we were using for our inputs and discussions. So like keep what you're sending coming along, and then we can. No, yeah, and like, it was really more of just like, of just coming in here. So, yeah.
I did look.
I was picking up my daughter like, anyway, so.
I knew no one was, that's what I meant, like, it's for
Yeah.
after.
Do we have anybody that would like to adjourn our meeting?
I have one more thing to say. I'm
Oh.
sorry.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead. There was a question that came in on the chat. It says, is it not a conflict of interest to have a county commissioner on the budget committee?
I can answer that. I was concerned about that, so I checked with the county council lawyer about it, and he checked all the pertinent laws. And as long as I'm not a leader controlling it, and as long as I take myself out of any budgets involving the county, I won't vote on the budget for the dispatch center stuff. It's totally legal. I did check on that to make sure.
So instead of us, voting on whether we think Mark can vote, you're just not voting.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Sheriff Pokey, thank you so much.